Listen carefully. Some letters are never meant to be mailed. Some remain hidden for years, waiting for the exact moment when two hearts are finally ready to understand them. Today's story is fictional, created to inspire hope, faith, patience, and the courage to love honestly. Stay until the end, because the words inside this letter will change two lives forever. It was a quiet Thursday evening. The rain had just begun to fall. People hurried down the sidewalks, trying to escape the storm before it became heavier. You stepped inside a small neighborhood bookstore, more interested in staying dry than buying anything. Warm lights filled the room. The gentle smell of coffee and old books instantly made you feel at peace. You slowly wandered through the aisles. There was no destination. No plan. Only silence. Sometimes silence is exactly where healing begins. As you reached for an old leather-bound novel, something slipped onto the floor. An envelope. Cream-colored. Sealed with deep red wax. Across the front, written in careful handwriting, were only 4 words. My beloved one. Your heart paused. You looked around. No one seemed to notice. The bookstore owner was helping another customer. A young woman sat reading quietly near the window. Soft piano music played through hidden speakers. The envelope looked as though it had been waiting for someone. You carefully picked it up. This must belong to someone, you whispered. Before you could take another step, a calm voice spoke behind you. I've been wondering when someone would find it. You turned around. Standing only a few feet away was someone about your age. Their expression was kind. Not surprised. Almost relieved. You know about this? You asked. They nodded. I do. Is it yours? A gentle smile appeared. No. But I know the person who wrote it. You looked back at the envelope. It sounds important. It is. A moment of silence passed between you. The stranger walked closer. My cousin wrote letters whenever life became difficult. They believed that words could carry hope farther than fear. You carefully held the envelope. Should I give it to you? They slowly shook their head. I don't think it belongs to me anymore. Those words surprised you. What do you mean? My cousin always believed that some letters don't choose their readers. The readers choose the letter. You smiled. That's a beautiful way to think. It's the only way they ever thought. The rain outside became heavier. Neither of you seemed interested in leaving. Instead, you walked toward the bookstore cafe. You ordered coffee. The stranger chose tea. Conversation came naturally. You spoke about favorite books. Childhood memories. Dreams that had quietly followed you for years. For the first time in a long time, talking didn't feel difficult. It felt peaceful. After a while, the stranger looked at the envelope resting beside your cup. I've never actually read that one. You haven't? No. My cousin sealed it before moving away. They said, whoever truly needs these words will find them. You looked at the wax seal. I almost feel guilty opening it. You don't have to. I know. But now I'm curious. They laughed softly. So am I. Outside. The rain slowly stopped. Golden evening sunlight appeared through the clouds. The bookstore became almost empty. Only the two of you remained. Finally. The stranger gently pushed the envelope toward you. I think it's time. You took a slow breath. Your fingers carefully broke the wax seal. Inside rested several handwritten pages. The handwriting was elegant. The first line immediately caught your attention. My beloved one. You quietly began reading aloud. If these words have found you, then perhaps hope has found you too. For a long time, I believed silence was safer than honesty. I convinced myself that hiding my feelings would protect my heart. Instead, it only made me lonelier. You stopped reading. The stranger remained completely still. You continued. Today I choose something different. Today I finally put my feelings into words. Not because I know what tomorrow holds, but because love deserves honesty more than fear deserves silence. A deep silence filled the cafe. Neither of you spoke. The words felt strangely personal. Not because they predicted the future, but because they reminded both of you that courage often begins with a single honest sentence. Just as you turned the page, a folded photograph slipped from the letter onto the table. Both of you looked down. The stranger's face suddenly lost all color. They whispered only 3 words. I remember this. Listen carefully. Sometimes, a single photograph can tell the story that words never could. The stranger carefully picked up the picture. Their hands trembled. I haven't seen this in years. You leaned closer. The photograph showed 2 young people standing outside the very same bookstore. Both were smiling. Between them was a wooden bench decorated with white flowers. On the back of the photograph were 7 handwritten words. Some promises simply need more time. The stranger stared at the words. My cousin wrote this. You can tell? I've seen this handwriting my whole life. A quiet silence settled between you. The bookstore owner noticed your expressions and slowly walked over. Did you find something special? The stranger handed him the photograph. His eyes widened. I remember this day. You do? He nodded. Your cousin donated dozens of books before leaving. They left this photograph inside one of them. I always wondered who would eventually discover it. You looked at the owner. Did they ever come back? He smiled sadly. Only once. They stayed for less than an hour. They walked through every aisle. Sat at that same table. And before leaving, they said something I've never forgotten. What did they say? He looked toward the window. They said, if hope is real, the right people will always find each other at the right time. Those words settled quietly inside your heart. The stranger smiled through watery eyes. That sounds exactly like them. The owner returned to the counter, giving both of you space. For several minutes neither of you spoke. Instead, you continued reading the letter. My beloved one. If you're reading this beside someone who brings peace instead of confusion, don't ignore that feeling. Real love rarely begins with fireworks. It often begins with quiet conversations, shared laughter, mutual respect, and the courage to remain honest. You paused. The stranger looked at you. They always believed that. You smiled. I think I do too. The stranger folded their hands. Can I tell you something? Of course. I almost didn't come to the bookstore today. Really? I was tired. I almost stayed home. You laughed softly. So did I. Their eyes widened. Seriously? You nodded. I only came because the rain started. Both of you smiled. It suddenly felt amazing how close both of you had come to never meeting at all. Outside, the storm had completely disappeared. Sunlight reflected across the wet streets. Children laughed as they passed the bookstore. Life continued. Ordinary. Beautiful. The stranger looked back toward the letter. There's more. You turned the page. Another paragraph waited. The future isn't something you're supposed to predict. It's something you're invited to build. One kind choice. One honest conversation. One forgiven mistake at a time. Never allow fear to decide who deserves your kindness. You slowly lowered the paper. I needed to hear that. So did I. The stranger reached into their backpack. I've been carrying something. They carefully placed a small leather notebook onto the table. My cousin gave this to me years ago. I've never shown it to anyone. They opened the first page. Inside were dozens of handwritten reflections. Small reminders. Simple prayers. Thoughts about hope. About forgiveness. About becoming the kind of person capable of loving well. One sentence immediately caught your attention. The greatest gift you can offer another heart is consistency. You smiled. That's beautiful. They believed love wasn't proven by big speeches. They believed it was proven by showing up. You quietly repeated the words. Showing up. The stranger nodded. Again and again. A comfortable silence followed. Neither of you noticed that nearly 2 hours had passed. The bookstore owner announced closing time. People slowly gathered their belongings. You and the stranger walked toward the entrance together. The cool evening air greeted you. Streetlights reflected across the pavement. For a few moments, neither of you wanted to say goodbye. Finally, the stranger smiled. I hope this isn't the last conversation we have. It doesn't have to be. They looked relieved. I'd like that. Just then, a car pulled up beside the sidewalk. An older woman stepped out quickly. She called the stranger's name. There you are. The stranger looked surprised. Aunt Maria. She hurried over. I've been trying to reach you. What happened? She took a slow breath. Your cousin is coming home. The stranger smiled. They finally decided? She nodded. Yes. But there's something they need to tell both of us. The smile slowly faded from the stranger's face. What do you mean? She looked at the unopened pages still resting in your hands. The letter isn't finished. There was another one. And this time, she looked directly at you. It was written for the person who would one day change everything. Stay until the end. Because the final letter would reveal a truth neither of you ever expected. Listen carefully. Not every ending is meant to break your heart. Sometimes, an ending quietly opens the door to a brand new beginning. The evening air felt cooler now. The stranger stood frozen. Their aunt's words echoed in the silence. There was another letter. You looked down at the pages still resting in your hands. Another letter, you asked softly. She nodded. Your cousin never stopped writing. They believed that one day, someone would understand why. The stranger slowly turned toward you. I've never heard about a second letter. They kept it private, their aunt replied. They said the time wasn't right. A gentle breeze moved through the quiet street. The bookstore owner stepped outside and joined the conversation. I think. He smiled kindly. We should continue this inside. Moments later, all four of you sat around the small cafe table. The owner carefully disappeared into a storage room. When he returned, he carried an old wooden box. Its corners had faded with time. Dust covered the lid. He gently placed it on the table. I promised your cousin I wouldn't open this. I was only supposed to give it away when the right moment arrived. The stranger looked overwhelmed. You've kept it all these years? He smiled. Some promises are worth keeping. Slowly, the lid opened. Inside rested only one envelope. Unlike the others, it carried no name. Only 4 simple words. When hope becomes real. Nobody spoke. The stranger looked at you. I think you should read it. You hesitated. Are you sure? They nodded. I've never been more sure. You carefully broke the seal. The paper unfolded. The familiar handwriting immediately filled your heart with peace. You began reading aloud. My beloved one. If these words have found you, then something beautiful has already happened. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because 2 hearts chose kindness instead of fear. Perhaps you met by accident. Perhaps you believe it was only coincidence. Either way, be grateful. The greatest blessings often arrive looking completely ordinary. You paused. Everyone listened quietly. You continued. There is something I learned far too late. Love doesn't ask us to know the future. It asks us to be faithful in the present. Don't waste today worrying about tomorrow. Don't hide your feelings because you're afraid of being misunderstood. And never assume someone knows they matter. Tell them. The stranger quietly wiped away a tear. Their aunt reached over and gently held their hand. You continued reading. If someone makes you feel safe enough to be yourself, protect that connection. Not because it is guaranteed to last forever, but because every genuine relationship changes us for the better. The strongest future isn't built by perfect people. It's built by imperfect people who choose grace, forgiveness, patience, and honesty. The room remained silent. The words didn't promise miracles. They didn't predict tomorrow. They simply reminded everyone listening that love grows through everyday choices. Near the bottom of the page, one final paragraph remained. If you're reading this beside someone who has brought peace into your life, don't let fear write the ending. Write it together. One day, one conversation, one act of kindness at a time. The final line simply said, "The rest of the story belongs to you." You slowly folded the letter. Nobody spoke for several moments. Finally, the bookstore owner smiled. "I think your cousin knew exactly what they were doing." The stranger laughed softly. "They always did." Outside, the sky glowed with the warm colors of sunset. The rain had completely disappeared. The stranger looked toward you. "Can we take a walk?" "I'd like that." Together, you wandered through the quiet streets. Neither of you hurried. Neither of you felt the need to fill every silence. Sometimes, walking beside the right person says more than words ever could. After a while, you stopped near the small bridge overlooking the river. The city lights shimmered across the water. The stranger smiled. "You know, I've been thinking." "What about?" "The first letter." You smiled. "My beloved one?" They laughed. "Yes. I don't think it was written for one specific person anymore." "What do you mean?" "I think it was written for anyone willing to choose courage over fear." You nodded. "I believe you're right." A peaceful silence settled between you. Then, the stranger looked into your eyes. "I'm grateful we met." "So am I. I don't know exactly what our future looks like." "Neither do I. But I'd like to discover it honestly. Without pretending. Without hiding. One day at a time." You smiled. "I couldn't ask for a better beginning." The evening breeze carried the sound of church bells across the town. For the first time in a very long time, the future didn't feel frightening. It felt hopeful. Not because anyone had predicted it. Not because anyone had promised a perfect ending. But because two ordinary people had learned something extraordinary. That love is not found in dramatic moments alone. It is built through kindness. Protected by honesty. Strengthened by patience. And guided by faith. Thank you for listening to this fictional, faith-inspired story. If this story encouraged you, remember this simple truth. The most meaningful words are often the ones we finally find the courage to say. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment. I choose faith over fear. May your heart be filled with hope, peace, and the courage to speak with kindness, one day at a time. The end.